Hey guys, it's Maymay and welcome back to Christmas in July. And I decided to try something. I took out my Patina stamp set and I wanted to try to make Christmas trees with some of the images on that stamp set. And actually, I think you could do a lot more than I did in this video, but I had a lot of fun and I got carried away. And I'm doing it in voiceover style because I wanted to play with a lot of different techniques. And it's hard for me to film so many techniques in just a few minutes and do a talkie with you at the same time. So I decided to do it this way. So I took that first image and I'm using some twisted citron from the Distress Oxide inks, and I'm just stamping it loosely in the shape of a Christmas tree. The cool thing about this is this technique is very distressed. It's very textured. It's very deconstructed. So you can really play around and you don't have to worry about if you're overlapping the stamp. You can see how some of the areas are darker green and lighter green. That's where the stamp is overlapping, and it really doesn't matter. So I stamped this down to the shape of a Christmas tree, which I thought turned out pretty well considering the stamp I was using. And then I went back at the very end and I just stamped and did a couple of second generation, even a third generation, to kind of fill in some of those airy spots. And you don't have to do that. I just kind of went back and did it. Then from that same stamp set, I'm using the one that I love to call the shredded wheat stamp. And this color is Vintage Photo. And I'm using this to be the trunk of the tree. Now on some of the trunks of the trees I stamp that one twice, but on this one I just did it once. Then I decided to go and take some candied apple red ink and this star from my stamp set called All Is Bright and use that for the top of the tree. And look how simple and cute that is. So I thought, okay, if it worked for this, we're going to keep going and see what else we can do. So I decided to try to make it look elegant. I thought the first one was very whimsical, especially with the citron and the red. I felt like that was a good Christmas whimsy combination. So for this one, I'm going to do gold and silver. And I'm going to use the Nuvo embossing that has the glitter in it, so it's really going to sparkle. Now, the cool thing is with using navy paper like I'm using, you can really see how much of that powder tool I use. And I do that because this is the glitter embossing powder, and I find that some of the glitter will get everywhere no matter what I do. So I really load it with that powder tool. But you can see that the image is actually getting to where it needs to be, and it's a good dark, a good wet stamp. You can see that I'm going to have plenty of liquid for it to adhere to when we go to pour that on. So I just stamped this all the way down just like I did the one before, just using the Versamark ink instead of my oxides. And you could do this with a pigment ink if you wanted to maybe do a colored Christmas tree and maybe just clear emboss it. That would be pretty too. So I take this gold glitter. It is so beautiful. Look at the glitter. It's so pretty. I'm going to tell you something I learned because I played with this a good bit. I don't do it on this one because this is the first one I did, but in the future when I use this glitter and heat emboss with it, I start from the back of the page and kind of melt the product first from behind because that kind of grabs the glitter. I found that when I took my heat tool to the front, I kind of blew the glitter away. So I wanted to kind of give you that tip. So here, don't worry about how much you use because you don't waste it. You pour it right back into your jar. And I do let my heat tool heat up just a few minutes because the less time I have to hold it on my cardstock, the less warping I get. So see how here I took it straight to the front of the glitter? Some of that glitter kind of blows away, but if you start in the back and melt from behind, that kind of grabs the glitter and you lose less. You get less falling off, if that makes sense. I even kind of turn it to the back side in a few minutes. I do that anyway to keep the page from warping unevenly, but trust me on this. With this glitter stuff, try heating it from the back first. So I just melt this gold onto this page. How beautiful is gold and navy together, right? And you might not think about that for Christmas, but if you think about the night sky, I think it works. Then I decide we're going to two-tone it, right? So I take the powder tool again, because since I blew all that off, with the heat tool and stuff, I just want to be safe, so I re-powder tooled it, and I take the shredded wheat stamp, it's always going to be called that, and I just stamp it at the bottom, and I decide to do the star. This is literally the same card we did before, but just in more elegant textures. I think it turns out really cool. So stamp the star at the top, and we're going to use the silver glitter on this. I just love this one. I think it is beautiful. Is your head already spinning about what all you could do with this stamp set? I hope so. We do a bunch in just a few minutes, but I want you to see how this turns out too. So just sprinkle that. I actually end up coming back to this card, and where that shredded wheat stamp is, you can see it's kind of not a whole lot of that silver stuck. So I actually end up coming back and stamping it one more time on top of there to be the tree trunk, because it just didn't get quite as glittery as I want, but I did the same process just right over the top. Look at that, same cards, just total different effects. Love how they look. So now we're going to really play. So this actually turns out to be my very favorite of the whole process. And I want you to know that I probably had an hour and 45 minutes of footage of these cards just playing. So I tried a lot of different things. For this one, I take that long kind of modelly looking stamp and I'm just selectively inking it. You see how I'm just inking an edge of the stamp, and that edge I take to the card. Then when I go back to the ink pad, I move it down a little bit and get a little more inked, and then take that edge to the card. And I do that all the way down in the shape of a Christmas tree. See how it's kind of like we're looking at the middle of the tree and it's coming into the card front? I just think this one turned out great. And I love this stamp as a Christmas tree because it feels like almost like a Fraser fir kind of. It kind of gives me that feel of like a classic Christmas tree. So I also am overlapping a little bitty bit, not a whole lot, but I'm overlapping each time just a little bit in between so it won't look so separated. But honestly, I think you can't mess this up. I think you can just play and have a good time. Now, you'll see this a lot. I take that same stamp. I'm going to stamp the top of this card. Again, I'm selectively inking it. I'm only inking half of the stamp, so I'm just going to stamp half of that star at the top of the page. This one, for whatever reason, I inked the whole thing, and I just stamp half of it onto the bottom. So we get the star, the tree trunk, and the tree. Now I let this in because I wanted to remind you of this tool. This is my Squeaky Clean dispenser bottle. It's filled with Squeaky Clean, and I can come and wipe my mat up whenever I get ink, wherever I don't want to get it on another card, and just wipe it up. And I don't have to spray my Squeaky Clean, so notice I can leave my card front sitting right there because it's not going to get any overspray on it. I love that dispenser tool. Okay, so now I take my Big Merry Christmas from our Celebrate the Season stamp set, and I decided to use the Misty for this because I was so happy with how that tree turned out. I did not want to take a chance of getting this crooked, so I used the Misty to line it up, and I decided just to use some black VersaFine Onyx black ink because I love the way this Merry Christmas looks in that VersaFine ink. I think this really is my favorite. It may just be because I like this color combination, this kind of bold and graphic design. I like this, and so this one turned out to be my favorite. But I'm nowhere near done. I got a few more to show you. So this is the same technique I did with the very first stamp, with the very first tree, the same stamp, the same everything. But now I take this paint drop, and in my mind, this is going to be the perfect ornament. Like that's what I have. I'm like, I'm going to selectively ink this little image, and I'm going to make it an ornament. Now I inked it up and I noticed that there was a wrinkle in my Distress ink pad and it left a little mark, so I had to go back and ink it a couple more times to get a good solid coverage of ink. But here what I do is I take the top of that little paint drop and I try to make it look like an ornament hanging off one of the branches. In all honesty, when I finish this, you're going to think, this is not my favorite. It wasn't my favorite either, but I do a little bit of fixing and I think it comes out okay. But I still like the idea, and I think that the kind of deconstructed look of this paint drop against this tree, it does look like an ornament. I don't think anybody would look at it and think that's not an ornament. And it was super fun to play. Now, one thing I did different on this tree, you might notice, the first tree I went in and filled in those spaces that I had missed. On this one I didn't because I had the intention of hanging these little ornaments. So I thought it'd be cool if I left myself some room in that tree, and that way the ornaments could really hang. Also, you notice that I end up inking more and more as I go, so the string for the ornament gets longer and longer. So you might want to pay attention to that if you don't like the longer drop of the ornament. It was a little bit much, and the cool thing is it's like decorating a Christmas tree and not being, Christmas time, which I love because I love Christmas trees all year round. Now I decided to take my star punch and punch out some glitter paper. So this is just glitter cardstock. I use a little foam square and pop it up, and then I'm going to put it at the top. Now, in hindsight, I think it's a little bit small. I probably could have used a little bigger star punch, but I still like it, and I think it works fine. And it's very glittery, hard to see with my lights, but it's very glittery. So it wasn't glittery enough when I did that. So I decided to take my red Wink of Stella, and on those ornaments, I decided to paint all of them with the red Wink of Stella glitter brush pen. And I really think it helps, in person especially. Wink of Stella is so hard to show on camera, but I think this really helps to give us some more glitter. Now, once I finished this, I thought, this needs something else, so I just kept playing. So I take out my black pen, and I decide to do a wiggly line over that red. It just was too bold for me. And I think, okay, I'm going to knock it back a little bit to kind of make that look like a string. And so I just wiggle it on top of that little red drop from the paint drop. I do that on every one of the ornaments. And then I decide I'm going to come back to every ornament and I'm going to do a little bow. So for my bow, all I do is I draw a figure 8 at the top, sideways, and then do 2 little tails. And once I did this, I felt like, okay, this is really tied together and I really like it. And I think I would love to use this for a card. It just tied everything together and made it make more sense. So it wasn't quite so disconnected in my mind. I really did like how this one turned out. I actually like it so much that I went to another one that I had made and I took my silver pen and did the same thing but using silver. And I think this one turns out real cute too. This one's much cuter in person because the silver has a shimmer that's really hard to see on camera. Did the same thing, the figure 8 bows at the top of every ornament. Then I went back and did some little silver dots all over the place because I thought it was cute. Now this card is really funny. So my mom was at the shop when I was filming this and I showed her that card and she's like, okay, that one's not my favorite. I actually showed her all of them. She's like, that one's not my favorite. And I agreed. I think that card being done in two-tone green made it not work. So I decided to try to do the same tree again, but this time use 2 different colors instead of two-tone green. So this is that kind of speckly stamp, and I'm using Twisted Citron, and I'm just stamping this one. Look how it's like a perfect tree on one side. Then I just flip it to get the bottom. You don't have to flip it. You really could leave it straight up like it was, but I thought to give myself a little bit of different movement on the side, I kind of flip the page around, and then I end up just turning it right back to do the top. But I think this one looks much better in the two-tone, the green and the red color, the way I'm going to do it here today, this time, than the way I did it the first time. I don't know what it was about the 2 tones of green that just didn't work. So for this one, all I did was stamp it 5 times. Okay, so the 2 tops, the 2 sides, and once in the middle. Then I take the candy apple color, and here's the trick. You have to be careful not to stamp directly where you did the first one. So you need to move it around and make sure you see some green behind it. If you end up stamping directly where you did your first time, you're going to change the color of that green ink. It will literally give you a new shade. So you want to make sure you offset this stamp. So I moved it around a good bit to look underneath to see how much green I could see and really mix this one around. Now, in hindsight, or looking back on the card front, this is not my favorite, but I wanted to show you because this may be someone's favorite one out of the whole bunch. You just never know. So 2 colors, red and green. Then I went back and did the same star at the top and the trunk at the bottom. This trunk I actually stamped twice on top of each other to make it a taller trunk at the bottom. So there's that one. It's okay. It's better than the first one to me. It's okay. That was this one. This was the first one that I was recreating. I don't know. Now that I look at it, I kind of like the two-tone green too. And then here I'm just going to go back and show you all of them all at one time. And for every one of these, I do believe you could do the same thing we did with the first one and do it in the elegant look as well, just by heat embossing it with your pretty shiny metallic colors. I think it would work. I just think it's so cool to be able to take a stamp set and stretch it to do something else. Who would have thought this would be a Christmas stamp set? But it really does work. I think it looks amazing. Of course, I'm biased because I had a lot of fun doing this, and I'm really proud of how it turned out. They really are fun. If you just want to go into your craft room and play, I pulled out my 4 favorite. These are my 4 favorite ones that I ended up with. And this is that stamp set as a whole so you could see it. Hey, if you make a card project like this or you try to do this, please share it with us over on our Facebook group, which is called Maymay Made It, and so did I. I love to see what you guys do, and I cannot wait to see how you take these images from this stamp set and turn them into Christmas images. There's probably a million other things we can do. Hey, thanks so much for watching today, guys. If you're interested in any of the supplies I used today, there'll be a blog post link below so you can go and get those supplies. There'll be links for them all listed. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.